Next, I would like to invite a good friend, Professor Dan Clark. Professor Clark is a professor of clinical engineering and director of the clinical engineering and health technologies at the Nottingham University Hospital. He was just recognized and awarded with the Officer of the Order of the British Empire by Her Majesty the Queen for services to clinical engineering, specifically during the COVID-19 period. It's my honor to invite Professor Clark to address the issues of regulation and distribution in the UK. Dan?
Dean, thank you so much for those kind words. Indeed, I should clarify right at the start of this presentation that I am, as Yadin said, a clinical engineer. I have no particular expertise in vaccinations. I have been involved in a relatively small way in my part of the UK, supporting the vaccine rollout programme, but this presentation will very much be a high-level overview of the regulation and distribution programme in the UK. Next slide, please. So the UK is being held up in some quarters anyway as a success story in terms of the vaccine programme. And if it is true that it's a success story, we certainly, the UK certainly did get out of the blocks very quickly. This chart on the left-hand side shows the total number of vaccines delivered in the week before Christmas. And you can see that on that slide, the UK is certainly well in the front globally. The right-hand chart shows the same total number of first doses given. It's just a snapshot of some of the data that earlier presenters have shown. But again, it shows that the UK is doing very well in terms of the total number of first doses delivered. Next slide, please. So if this is seen as a success, what are the reasons for it? Why are the UK apparently doing so well? Well, there are three key factors at play here, I believe, and we'll look at them in a little bit of detail now. But they are, firstly, the rapid regulatory approval achieved in the UK. And then secondly, what I perhaps uncharitably referred to as the UK's spread betting, which paid off. If you like, the UK government backed the right horses in terms of choosing vaccines. And then thirdly, the infrastructure was already in place through the National Health Service, a national infrastructure which could be repurposed very quickly to deliver the rollout of the vaccines. Next slide, please. So let's quickly look at each of these factors in terms. Now, I'm not going to say a great deal now about the clinical trial process for developing vaccines. That's been covered by previous speakers, except to say that it is, generally speaking, a very long process. 10 years is not untypical. And it involves a number of phases, the preclinical stage of laboratory research, then phase 1, followed by phase 2, followed by phase 3 clinical studies. And only after all of that would it get to the regulatory review process. The regulatory review process itself can take quite a long time because the regulatory authorities have to look at all that evidence, all that information from those various studies before making their decisions. Next slide, please. And in the case of COVID, we know that a lot of those clinical trials have been concertinaed. Events which would normally take place sequentially have been done overlapping or in parallel. And this is also true of the regulatory process. Ordinarily, the regulators wait until the very end of phase 3 testing before they start to look at the data coming from the whole range of studies. But in the case of COVID, the regulators in the UK, the MHRA, started receiving information from the trials from the very first moment it was available. So from the preclinical studies and from the phase 1, as soon as it was available, it was exchanged with the regulators. So that there wasn't this huge amount of work to be done at the end. And the MHRA introduced what they referred to as a rolling review. So they were looking at the evidence as soon as it was available to be reviewed. And this enabled them to speed up the process. Ordinarily, this is not the way it's done, partly because manufacturers, researchers don't want to commit to giving their information, the data, to the regulatory bodies before the very end, because they want to wait until they're pretty sure that their vaccines are going to be successful. That was not the case with COVID. All of the manufacturers running these trials were keen to share their data as soon as it became available. Next slide, please. This slide is slightly out of order, I apologize, but this just shows the three vaccines which have been approved in the UK and the dates from which they were approved by the regulatory authorities. So the Pfizer, the vaccine was the first to reach approval, and that was at the very beginning of December. That was followed at the end of December by the Oxford AstraZeneca one, and then the Moderna one on the 8th of January this year. Next slide, please. So the second factor involved in the success, if you like, of the UK vaccine rollout programme was the fact that the UK government, if you like, backed the right horses. We've already seen in earlier presentations that there were an awful lot of trials going on in different areas of the world on vaccines, and the UK, being a wealthy country, was able to pre-order doses of vaccines long before they reached regulatory approval, and indeed before they'd even come through their successfully through their clinical trials. The UK government, if you like, spread bets. It bought into a number 7 of the major vaccine trials, and we're lucky that 3 of them, the AstraZeneca, the Pfizer and the Moderna one, were the 3 that were successful early on. And this chart just shows the number of doses of each vaccine that the UK government committed to buy. And you can see there that between the AstraZeneca, Pfizer and Moderna one, the UK government pre-ordered over 157 million doses. Now, given that the UK population is only 66 million, approximately 12 million of which are children, and there'll be a number of other people who either can't or won't accept the vaccine, the UK probably only needs about 120 doses in total. And so the UK government have already pre-ordered sufficient vaccine for its entire population. Next slide, please. Furthermore, the UK government got lucky in the fact that 2 of the 3 vaccines already approved were local, relatively speaking, to the UK. The Pfizer was obviously the first vaccine approved, and although that's a German company that developed it, one of the manufacturing plants is in Brussels, and Brussels is a very short distance away from the UK. And given that the UK was the first country to approve regulatory approval for the Pfizer one, and for a period of time was the only country that had approved it, supply of the Pfizer vaccine into the UK was very rapid indeed. The Oxford AstraZeneca was also approved in December, and there are 3. I mean, AstraZeneca have plants all over the world producing this vaccine, but 3 of them are in the UK. So again, the UK government got lucky in that the distribution of the AstraZeneca was obviously going to be easy because it was already in the UK. Next slide, please. So the third reason why the UK got up to speed very quickly with its vaccine programme is because it does already have a national health service. So the NHS is a huge organisation. It provides all range of healthcare across the whole of the United Kingdom, from self-help to pharmacies to emergency care to local doctors to acute care to mental health and the ambulance 999 service. So that infrastructure was already in place and could be rapidly repurposed in order to develop the vaccination program. 1.3 million people work in the NHS, so it was fairly easy to get the organisation of that repurposed to deliver the vaccine program. Next slide, please, Kelly. To give you a flavour for how they managed to do this, the first regulatory approval happened on the 2nd of December. Within a week, by the 8th of December, there were 40 major hospitals right across the kingdom, right across the United Kingdom, already delivering a vaccination program, including my own hospital in the Midlands. A month later, by the 8th of January, there were 1,000 centres providing vaccination, including 7 mass vaccination centres in sporting arenas and major entertainment venues. And by the 16th of January, the number of centres had increased far beyond that, including 17 mass vaccination centres, and the UK at that time was vaccinating about 350,000 doses per day. On the 16th of January, they'd already delivered 4 million first doses. Next slide, please, Kelly. So like other governments, I'm sure, the UK government prioritised who would get the vaccine first, and they came up with 9 groups which this chart shows the top 4 of those groups, the most high priority groups. And those were firstly residents of care homes, so old people living in care homes, and their workers and the care workers that looked after them. Then everybody over 80, plus frontline health and social care staff. And then by age, everybody over 75, and then everybody over 70. In these 4 groups, then, these top priority groups, there's roughly 15 million people in the UK. And the UK target, the government target, was to complete the first dose of those 15 million people by the middle of February, by the 15th of Feb. And one of the ways the UK government accelerated their ability to do that was by taking a courageous, though some would say controversial, decision to delay the second dose of both the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca. As you'll know, their manufacturers describe a first dose followed 3 weeks later by a second dose, but in the UK a decision was taken to push that second dose out to 10 weeks. Now, clearly by doing that, you can get to more people more quickly to get their first dose, but it's a courageous decision in that it goes against manufacturer recommendation, and there is no evidence currently to support the efficacy of making that decision. There's no evidence to suggest that making that decision was not going to be efficacious either, but nonetheless, that was a controversial decision which has split both the medical and scientific communities in the UK. Next slide, please, Caliroy. So if that was the top 4 highest priority groups, the next 5 priority groups are essentially in age order: the over 65s, the over 60s, people with underlying health conditions, and so on down through the age range. So given that the UK population is 66 million, given that by the 15th of February, the 50 million highest priority will have received their first jab, given that there's about 12 million children who won't be receiving a jab under the current protocols, that means we've got about 39 million people in these remaining 5 groups. If the UK continues to deliver doses at approximately 350,000 doses per day, then the targets that the government have set, which was to get the top priority groups first and second doses by about early spring, and the entire population of the UK to be offered doses, first and second doses, by September at the latest. And these are reasonable targets and look like being achieved given the speed of current vaccination program. Next slide, please, Caliroy. And so finally, then, just to summarise all of that, the UK has got off to a flying start and has got a currently very successful vaccination programme. The factors behind that were, first, the rapid regulatory approval that the MHRA undertook with this rolling approval that they put in place. Secondly, that the UK government bought the right number of the right types of vaccines and got quite lucky that they backed the right horses and pre-ordered vaccines which became available very quickly. And thirdly, that the NHS infrastructure, the National Health Service infrastructure, was already in place across the whole country, which enabled this very rapid mobilisation and repurposing. I think that's me done. Thank you very much, Yadin. Next slide, I think, is just a, yeah, thanks now.
Dan, thank you very much. Very, as always, very clear and pointed presentation. I appreciate very much. With that, we finish a tremendous large volume of information shared by experts on the faculty and on a very evolving and moving target, the vaccination and its distribution and the technology that clinical engineers are facing.